I thought early on, as early as when I was at the University of Michigan,
Mhm.
that I was going to find myself in business or on Wall Street. My interest in economics morphed into an interest in the economics of education. And off I went from there. I have more to say about it, but let me pause and see if you have a question or two that might focus me.
It's such an interesting journey because I think it brings up this place where serendipity and opportunity intersect and then and you shift course,
Mhm.
right? And sometimes necessity is woven in there too. So I'm wondering if your interest in education was latent and this just kind of brought it about, or had you not considered this interest before?
You know, since my mother was a school teacher,
Ah,
since my I had my sister as a teacher in the second grade and my dad's brother as a teacher in the eighth grade, um, um, I actually um, was trying to figure out how to do something other than education. But when I went to Teachers College, Columbia University, right
Mhm.
after Michigan, um, that put me into a particular network of people. I was one of 8 people in a program focused on this question of the economics of education and education finance, right?
Right.
As far as I can tell, I'm the only person who emerged from that program actually doing something that the program was designed
Right.
uh, to do. So I had to go, well, where does someone with this background go?
Right.
And they said, well, you need to go out to a policy shop that's trying to do research that's helping policymakers figure out how to improve the way we fund the country's schools, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I went. Turned out
Mm-hmm.
it was part of Ford's strategy because they were funding to create
Right.
this center
Right.
that did this work. So I went right from TC to the center, um, and um, and then went and got a PhD at the University of Colorado while I was there. And I got approached by um, Terry Peterson, who was at the time working for Governor Riley in
Mm.
South Carolina. But I helped Terry put the data together to reveal what you could buy with a 1 cent increase in the sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
What Terry never forgot that. And when the Lilly Endowment was looking for someone there in Indianapolis to come and join, he said, you should talk to Kent. And I said, I'm not going to Indiana. I'm perfectly happy out here in Colorado, right? And my wife, of course, said, Kent, you should actually look into this because I'm still waiting for you to get a real job, at some point. And that's ultimately how I ended up
Yeah.
my first stint in philanthropy.
Some interesting parallels. One, I think, is the deep pragmatics of those career choices. Um, my interest. There's some differences too, though. My interest in education started early. I had a high school English teacher who was amazing and had us reading all manner of things. And name was Joan Cohn. This is at El Cerrito High in El Cerrito, California, in the San Francisco Bay Area. And El Cerrito High was like many high schools in the country then and now. It was integrated, segregated. Right? So it was integrated if you looked at the overall numbers. But if you looked at who was taking AP classes and the honors classes and who was in the track that wasn't going to take you to college, it's incredibly segregated. And Ms. Cohn was taking courses at the local university. and had read Jeannie Oakes' Keeping Track as a part of her coursework. And she had us read it as 12th graders. And it was life-changing for me, which is kind of ridiculous to say, like this academic text, but it was the first time I had read a book that I didn't realize was scholarly work, but scholarly work that reflected my reality so deeply. Mm-hmm. And I could see it as, I was the one of a couple of Black kids in the honors classes because I advocated for myself to be in those classes. And I remember a counselor trying to counsel me out. And I was like, no. You don't understand. I need to be here. And so that book really spoke to the reality I was living as a high school student, which piqued an interest for me in education. I always thought I would be a teacher. That was my plan. That was my plan through college until I had an impromptu conversation with one of my African-American studies professors. So I was walking to campus one day and Roy said to me, what are you going to do when you graduate? And I said, I'm going to be a teacher. And he said, that's great. Get a master's degree first. I'm looking at master's programs and they just look boring. But on the opposite flap were PhD programs. And those looked really interesting. So I ended up in a PhD program in education. I figured I would just kind of raise kids and write some things on the side. I had this idea of a business card that's Naila Nasir, independent scholar. And then I was like, oh man, I gotta get a job. So I had no skill sets other than teaching and analyzing things. So I ended up in an assistant professorship at Stanford.
That's fascinating.
I went to public schools all through elementary, high school. I went to Berkeley for undergrad and UCLA for grad school. Mm-hmm. So the private school environment felt like a kind of an academic spa to me. Everything was shiny, like there was resources to do whatever you wanted. And at Stanford, everyone is so secure in some ways about their own academic prowess. They just leave you alone to do your work. At least that was the case then. And there's some downsides to that, individualistic. But for me at the time, it was the freedom that I needed and freedom and resources to develop my scholarship. So it was a great place actually to be at.